assault. What we are doing here is to explore a couple of angles within the context of the assault on Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. We have with us really two great scholars that are probably known to some of you at least, in order to discuss what that means when we use the word delegitimization, or we use the term which some have said they prefer. I also think it's more accurate, the assault on Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. I would, with your permission, just a couple of housekeeping comments. On the tables I see there is a book that just actually came out today. So if you smell the cover, you'll agree with me that it really is fresh. And this is a book that's associated to what we're talking about. It's a book that was put out by a partner organization of the World Jewish Congress, which is the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, that has done some wonderful work on the issues of Israel's rights, legal rights, diplomatic rights, as well as its right to defend itself as a free nation state. And as you may notice, this is an updated version of a book that was issued about a year ago after the Prime Minister discussed Israel's acceptance of a two-state for two-people solution with certain security provisos. If you notice the authors, what is unique about the book is that it is the first time as I remember, in the last 21 years, that such a profoundly distinguished group of generals, former chiefs of staff, former chief of intelligence, a deputy chief of staff, the head of former Prime Minister Olmert's negotiating team, got together to issue what would be Israel's critical security requirements for defensible borders. Is a term that we've heard this morning, we've heard before, and we actually heard it from the Prime Minister, that would be the foundation for a viable peace. This book has been considered by the White House. I was in that meeting with White House officials as they considered the book, and I actually I'm the only one on the cover without General, Brigadier General, just a little short. We can arrange that. You can buy that? Can I buy that for a price? Thank you, sir. And I think it really is worth reading because it's a really professional book. It's a book if one really wants to understand what the defense and security echelons are thinking when they use the language of security arrangements in any final peace settlement between Israel and our Palestinian neighbors. This would be the policy book, so I urge you to read it, and you are the first ones to receive it. There are only 50 copies, and those have been placed on the table. The second item that of significance is the NGO Monitor. Is the NGO Monitor sheet? Does it have the funding of? Read exactly the title, and you'll get it all. NGO. Yeah, NGOs and funders of BDS, which is, as we know, is short for boycotts, divestitures, and sanctions, lawfare and delegitimization, which is the work of this very important organization called NGO Monitor, headed by Professor Gerald Steinberg, whom I will introduce in just a second. This will actually provide you with the NGOs who are openly hostile to the Jewish people and to Israel, and to what type of funding arrangements and financing arrangements are actually being operationalized by your parliaments, some of your parliaments, and we will open that for consideration because this is a very, very acute part of this session of the assault on Israel's legitimacy. Allow me, please, just to introduce our two guests. Our two scholars. To my immediate right is Professor Gerald Steinberg, who is president of the NGO Monitor and professor of political studies at Bar-Ilan University, where he actually chaired the political science department for a number of years until it became just too much doing a day job and a night job. And NGO Monitor has become so widely covered by the international media for its work in holding NGOs accountable to high standards, which unfortunately is not the case when it comes to Israel. Professor Steinberg's his research interests include international relations, Middle East diplomacy, and security. He is recognized widely and appears on CNN, Fox, BBC, and the rest of the majors on the issues of general Middle Eastern diplomacy, on Iran, where he's an expert, one of the leading experts on Iran and Iran's nuclear program. And he has written so many academic publications, it would take our whole session to go through them, but he's a very widely read op-ed columnist in the Financial Times, Haaretz, International Herald Tribune, New York Times, Jerusalem Post, and he's seen on all the major television stations, and he's a mensch. Also, he's a really nice guy, above all of it, which I think is the most important. And to my almost immediate right is another dear colleague and friend, DJ Schneeweiss, a senior member of the Foreign Ministry staff, is responsible for the entire program at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to combat the assault on Israel's legitimacy. There's actually a division to combat the assault on Israel's legitimacy, and DJ Schneeweiss is the director of that effort. DJ was born in Sydney, Australia in 1964 and made Aliyah in 1987. And after joining the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in 1994, he was a policy assistant to Foreign Ministers Barak and David Levy. In the 90s, and DJ served as the press secretary at Israel's London embassy from 1998 to 2002, where where we know that he learned a lot about this subject, the assault on Israel's legitimacy, and how best diplomatically and in using other tools to combat it and confront it. DJ has been recognized by Diplomat magazine as the most effective embassy spokesman in London, which I've heard anecdotally from many other people, and having worked with him, it's clearly true. He's a true diplomat and a great strategic thinker, and I've had the opportunity to witness that firsthand. Until 2006, between 2003 to 2006, DJ served as a policy advisor to Foreign Minister Silvan Shalom, and from 2006 to 2009, he was Israel's deputy ambassador to China. He's married and lives in Jerusalem with two lovely children, and so DJ really brings a tremendous amount of diplomatic context to this battle that not only Israel faces, but there are implications for the free world as well in this assault on Israel as symbolic of a greater assault. So these are our two guests, and we'll again try to keep our comments very focused and then invite discussion in this context. Because it has been said, and with this I'll just open perhaps with 3 minutes of headline observations, that the assault on Israel's legitimacy is really the assault on the right of the Jewish people to self-determination in secure and recognized boundaries. So this is very much a Jewish issue, and by extension, it's very much an issue for other free democratic countries and the assault against their rights to exercise their basic right to self-defense and their basic right to live as a free and democratic country in secure and recognized boundaries. Now, what's happened in the assault on Israel? This is what I'd like you to know. Just with regard to UDI, I'm just going to focus on this for a minute on the unilateral declaration of independence by the Palestinians, which we've heard again and again and again, and I know we had a very sort of detailed, low-resolution analysis. But what has not been said yet, is that the Palestinian gambit for September is a fundamental assault. It's a fundamental offensive in the assault on Israel's most basic legal and diplomatic rights. And that has to be said very clearly. There is no other option diplomatically besides bilateral negotiations. That has been enshrined in international law since November 22nd, 1967, following the Six-Day War, which everyone here remembers, when the Security Council unanimously approved UN Security Council Resolution 242, which called for a negotiated solution between Israel and its neighbors. And of course, the Palestinians at that time were considered in that resolution as part of a bilateral refugee issue. They were refugees, and they were Jewish refugees, and that was the extent of their political relevance to that at that time. Since then, clearly, they've become a major actor in the diplomatic process with Israel since Madrid 1992, and then Oslo, and then Camp David, and on through Annapolis. But the principle that we have to keep in mind today, in the context of the assault on Israel's legitimacy, is that a negotiated solution is the only option in terms of international law. And what has happened, I would suggest, is that the legal and diplomatic principles which were enshrined and unanimously approved by the British and American drafters after 1967 have been distorted and transformed into a type of political reality that changes from moment to moment and has really turned against Israel, to the point at which we have signed agreements between the Palestinian leadership and Israel. As you heard Ambassador Barak said, Oslo II is still, of 1995, is still the governing diplomacy that governs the relationships between us, the relationship between us and the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian bid for unilateral statehood, which has gained great support in many circles in the world, even especially in Europe, is a fundamental violation of this signed agreement that was witnessed by none other than the United Nations itself and the European Union and Sweden, Norway, Egypt, and Jordan. So, and we see, especially in Europe, what is most remarkable, I must say, is that there are those in Europe, such as Javier Solana, the former EU foreign policy chief, who said publicly in 2009 that he would call on the Security Council to recognize a unilaterally declared Palestinian state. I mean, this is remarkable in terms of the test of the credibility of the international community itself and for the future of witness signatories such as the UN and the European Union with respect to the Oslo Interim Accords. Because here there are those in European circles who publicly have supported, not to mention what's happening in Latin America, a move which is a fundamental violation of these past agreements, which calls into question what value do any agreements have if these are certainly violated. And then it goes even deeper than that. What this is, this unilateral declaration of or intention to declare unilaterally and have it endorsed by the United Nations one way or the other, also uproots the entire concept of international diplomacy because of the witness signatories to the Oslo II Accords, as well as to the roadmap, which was a quartet initiative. So I think that what we ought to consider is to remind our parliaments and our governments that the international community is being tested here, to see whether or not we are going to stand up for fairness and principle in supporting Israel's fundamental rights, which by extension are the fundamental rights of any free country in the international diplomatic community who are in the middle of any particular territorial conflict and who seek the fair and objective and principle-based support of international organizations. I think that is what is at stake, much more than Israel's future being at stake. So let me leave that just as sort of the opening comments and to give us a macro view of what this means, the assault on Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people. I'd like to invite DJ Schneeweiss to give us sort of the overview as to what this means, and then we'll move to Professor Steinberg, who will focus on the NGO, the hostile NGO funding by various parliaments, and to assess that for ourselves as to what the implications of that are. Thank you.